Hello and welcome to my small lecture about the differences between British and Russian mathematical education in schools. This is the topic that a lot of people ask me questions about, especially those who began studying in Russia and then continued in British education. So how different is Russian program from British, and in general, so the same is applicable to most Eastern European programs and as compared with the Western programs such as British, American, Australian and some others. So let's begin. The first thing I would like to talk about is textual tasks. So in Russian school, people from the very young ages, such as maybe even the second year or sometimes the third year, start solving some easy tasks which are written in text, and then they need to understand what's being asked for, and then solve them using mathematical equations. So even some small tasks with x's, with y's, and with unknown variables. Under the British program, this is studied way further ahead. So sometimes I come across with the situations where children are in year 8 or maybe year 7 and they still do not know how to form an equation with x and how to solve it. So now transitioning to the second part of equations on their own. So equations, so something with x or y or with other variables. In Russian schools, children start solving them very early. So it's quite normal to have, as I already mentioned before, the first simple mathematical equations in year 3, and by year 5 pupils are pretty familiar with them and can solve even some more complicated or longer equations with x. Whereas in British school, the same is achieved closer to year 9 or maybe even year 12. Sorry, not 12, year 10. Then moving on to working with brackets and more technical stuff. For example, there is such thing as difference of squares, so a squared minus b squared, or square of the sum, square of the subtraction. And these are very technical mathematical problems. So this is the beginning of algebra, and again in Russian schools people study it almost for the whole year in the year 7, whereas in British schools somehow this is not a well spread task or well spread topic. So it seems to me that this topic is either not taught well or almost not taught at all, because very often it is the case when people come to me in preparation for GCSE in the year 10, for example, or 11, and they still make a lot of mistakes in opening the brackets, in multiplying one bracket by another, and are very weak in algebra. So these are the benefits of Russian education or Eastern European education in general in maths. However, now there are some disadvantages of, in my opinion, Russian schools and advantages of British education. Use of calculator. In Russian schools, uh, almost up to the end of the school program, it is prohibited to use calculators in school. So people have to memorize a lot of information, for example, those values for sine, cos, tan, and other trigonometric functions. People have to memorize a lot of other things and do not have access to calculator, which makes the teachers like basically which gives the teachers the need to prepare tasks in such a way so that the roots of the equations are good, so that the angles are also nice, so that the people could learn the values of certain angles and then use them. In British school, in contrast, calculators are normally allowed to use in most situations and most cases. There are some non-calculator paper though, papers. However, most of the times calculators are allowed and pupils are encouraged to use calculators, which makes this program much more realistic. For example, if you are solving the complicated geometric tasks, and like you have a bridge and that bridge has certain angle, that angle does not necessarily in real life have to be 60, 45 or 30 degrees. So the angle can very well be 28 or 25 degrees, and still in like having the calculator, being in British education, people can just type the value in the calculator and find its sine or cosine value and solve this task as they would do normally in real life, having encountered such problem. So use of calculators is a skill which in my opinion is necessary to obtain while studying at school, since after graduation, after leaving school, nobody will stop you from using calculator, and in case you do meet the problem that you need to solve in real life, you are going to use that technology. Statistics. Statistics and probability theory is the topic which is not really well covered in Russian schools, and which is covered in much bigger details in British schools. So, introduction to probability theory and some basic statistics, such as the use of Venn diagrams and probability tree diagrams, is very widely spread in GCSE questions. So at least maybe 2 or 3 questions in GCSE are on the topics of statistics. Whereas in Russian schools, probability theory is also studied, but not enough attention is given to it, and mostly people by the end of the school don't know how to solve even simple probability tasks unless they study in specialized physics and math schools. Which is a pity, because basic knowledge of probability theory, in my opinion, is essential for the school life. I mean, for the life after school, and people do encounter such tasks in their real life sometimes. Mechanics. Mechanics as a part of mathematics. So when we're talking about A-Level, mechanics is a module which is a part of mathematics in A-Level. Now, although in Russian schools mechanics is studied in physics and has nothing to do with maths. Uh, I will not judge whether it is a right decision or not, but this is the difference that people need to understand. So if you are going to study A-Level in British program, you are going to take modules in statistics and mechanics is part of physics. So here you will be able to solve the problems on if two objects collide with each other. You will have to deal with projectiles, with objects moving on this with certain acceleration, those pivots and slides where the object is sliding down the slide. So all these topics are topics which are normally covered in physics in Russian schools. So if the person is doing exams in mathematics, they will never have to solve such tasks. Whereas in British schools, even though some people prefer not to take physics at A-Level and take just maths, they have to study that mechanics module as well as statistics as part of A-Level, and you need to be ready for it. So these are the main difference. There are of course some other minor difference, but I'm not going to talk about them now since this video is long already. Thank you for attention and have a good time.